So at the end of the day here, I just got around to, after work, looking at newspapers, which I do, because a lot of times I get information from local sources and then, talk about it, give my perspective. But one of the things I've been saying for a while, and I told you guys I haven't heard a lot of people chime in and talk negative about Tacoma. People always call it Tacompton, or, Tacoma Fierce, or, whatever they want to call Tacoma. But in the last few months, Tacoma has really rapidly changed. And a lot of people here locally want to keep it the way that it has been. They want to, it used to be that people just hated the negative views that people had about Tacoma. Now a lot of locals want to bring that negative thought back because there's so many people and businesses locating here from Seattle. And so they want people to kind of still have that belief that this is not the place to be, even though it has rapidly changed. And I've talked about how the city itself has changed dramatically, and some of the things the city did back in the day to correct its past issues. And there was a point in time when people would literally fear downtown Tacoma, and now it's one of the safest places in the city. It still has, there's stuff that can happen, obviously. But so much has changed. And so now, yesterday, I think, or the day before, I saw a article that talked about Seattle and said Seattle is now the fastest growing big city again. It was eclipsed. There was a time when Las Vegas beat it, and then, in Denver and Austin and different cities have actually pushed it out of the top spot, and it's now number 2 amongst big cities, the biggest of cities. But that's where Seattle is, right? There's more people now still moving into Seattle. It's still a fastly growing city. It grows very, very quickly. There's still a lot of people moving to it, but there is a slowdown. And I told people a few months ago even that now is the time to buy in Tacoma, because it's going to get to a point where you really and truly can't, because the prices are going to swell. And I haven't done a lot of videos to give you a play-by-play as to what happens every single month, but I have told you guys that basically the price of my home hasn't went down like it has in other places in this area, because Tacoma seems to be getting quite a bit of it wasn't impacted by what's going on up in Seattle, because the prices here have always been so stagnant. But today in the Seattle Times, it says Tacoma's housing market is now the hottest in the U.S. and Seattle knows why. Okay, and it shows a picture of downtown Tacoma. It talks about Pacific Avenue sliced through downtown Tacoma. The city has now overtaken Seattle as the hottest housing market in the country in several key measurements, according to Redfin. Now, obviously, we know this is due to affordability. Now, people will say, well, they're only forced to go down there because it's much cheaper in Tacoma. And that's true. And my computer is going to be slow because Zoe's been playing on it. She's got these silly games that she plays, so it's going to take a while. But anyway. But this article is important, and I'll put the link down in the description box for you guys to check it out. But Paul Roberts does this report on the city, and it talks about, after years as an oasis of affordability, Tacoma is rapidly losing its status as a refuge for homebuyers priced out of places like Seattle. Sorry, a little pop-up comes up. One big reason those priced out Seattle homebuyers. According to a new report by Redfin, the Tacoma metro area has now overtaken Seattle as the hottest housing market in the country in several key measurements. Among those metrics, 49% of homes sold in Tacoma in May went for more than the asking price, compared to 37.8% in Seattle and 23.8% nationally. The median home price in Tacoma was on the market for just 8 days, the shortest period for any U.S. metro, while the supply of homes for sale is just 1.3 months, the lowest in the U.S. So that means that the number of homes available are only about a month, a little over a month's worth of homes, okay, which is very, 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 very low, very tight. The median price for Tacoma area homes in mid-May was up 6% from a year earlier to $370,000. And remember, I told you the honey spot here just about, I don't know, a month ago was about 350. I said, we were in the 330s or so, but it keeps going up. It's showing now it's about 370. It's not the biggest jump in the U.S. That honor goes to Camden, New Jersey, where it saw a 15.6% year-over-year jump in May. But Tacoma's increase is still more than a third above the national median increase, and more than twice that of Metro Seattle, where May home prices increased only 2.6% to $595,000. Seattle's prices were much higher than $595,000. They took a massive plunge all of last year, and so now they're going back up again, but they're only increasing by 2.6%, so let's say 3%, and now Tacoma's price growth is growing twice as fast as that of Seattle. Again, if you want to get into Tacoma, that doesn't mean you won't find houses cheaper than $370,000. You will, but the average is now about $370,000, and it's moving up quick. It has a lot of room to catch up to this particular price point. The Seattle comparison is apt, given that home buyers fleeing Seattle and heading south are a significant driver for Tacoma's hot market. And one of the city's Department of Community and Economic Development folks talk about that. When you have communities north of Tacoma that have a mix of higher incomes and higher housing costs, at some point those individuals are priced out of the market, and they just have to drive until they find a market that's more affordable. Down here it tells you a little bit about the national average, which is about $314,000 for a home. $370,000 is the median sale price in Tacoma, and about $595,000 for Seattle. It shows you the growth here of 6%. Nationally, homes stay on the market for about 37 days, which is long. That's a long time for here. Like, there's no house, unless it's just horrid, no house here will stay on the market that long. There's got to be a lot of issues. In Seattle, it stays on the market for 9 days. Tacoma, 8 days. It says here they're just tired of the bidding wars. And she says her Seattle clients are routinely losing out to tech company employees able to offer $100,000 in cash above a home's listing price. That's very true. You see a lot of homes that are listed cash only. You'll find here a lot of times cash only, cash only, cash only. You'll see that more in Seattle, but you also see it down here in Tacoma as well. We saw that when we were trying to look for homes before we bought this one. You see a lot of that. And the only people who can really afford cash only and $100,000 like that are some of these people who make a tremendous amount of money with these tech companies. So if you're going through the traditional way, using a loan, a lot of times you get pushed out, because if you offer, let's say a home is $400,000 and you offer them $450,000, but you're going through a conventional loan, and they get someone who's going to offer them $440,000, but they're going to give them cash, even though it's $10,000 cheaper than yours, they'll go with the all cash offer, right? So, because they're going to get their money much faster than if they will through a loan. Even though it's not a huge amount of time difference, they're going to get their money much faster, and so they'd rather go that route. So if they're offering more money than what you're offering and it's still all cash, you just don't stand a chance. And then you're up against, 10, 15, 20 people, and, it keeps getting bidded up so high to where you can't compete. In Tacoma, she says they get way more house for the buck. I definitely agree with that. You're going to get a whole lot more house, a whole lot more yard than what you're going to get in Tacoma for similar prices. Demand from Seattle buyers has been strong across the Tacoma market. Champion says, but it has been especially sharp for homes under $350,000. We can list a home at noon, have people touring it by that afternoon, and have offers by 8 p.m. That's very true. Homes turn around very quickly. But those Tacoma bargains come at a cost. Unlike Seattle, where a hot housing market reflects an equally hot job market, Tacoma can't offer newcomers quite the same employment prospects. That's left many of the transplants commuting back to jobs in Seattle. That's one of the reasons why Sound Transit, I think, made a major blunder in going the east side line to Bellevue. And I get why they're chasing after the money when we're talking about the Link light rail expansion, but the biggest city here in this region outside of Seattle is Tacoma, and we have a lot more people who commute back and forth from here up to Seattle because that's where the jobs are in terms of the money. And if you look at the Sounder commuter train, it is the busiest of the two lines. And they have expanded it tremendously, quite a bit, and it's still not enough because people can't afford to live in Bellevue. They can't afford to live in Seattle. So Tacoma offers them a much more of a city experience than what you're going to get in any other city here outside of Bellevue and Seattle, and it's much more affordable. And you're getting a lot of cultural amenities that you find in Seattle without the prices. 10 years ago, the commute was already as much as an hour each way, says Jen Arden, spokesperson for the Tacoma Economic Development Board. When I tell people how long it takes, I get folks in the comment section that argue. These are people who say, well, it takes me 30 minutes or 45 minutes. If you're going normal speeds and you're not like speeding, and if you account for traffic, it will take a while to get to Seattle. Now, can you get there faster? Sure. If you're speeding or if there's days or you're traveling off-peak times or off-peak days, sure. But during the typical working time frame, it can take a while to get up there depending upon where you start from down here in Tacoma. Today, Arden says the trip can stretch 2 hours each way. Time you can't use to get to a parent-teacher conference or take your dog to the dog park. And those bargain hunters from Seattle have helped fuel a new affordability crisis. Now, this is what I've talked about before, too. Folks move down here and they purchase homes in certain particular areas because you have more bang for your buck down here. And if you have $400,000, which is what you can afford, again, you're able to get homes in various different areas at a pretty good price, right? So you can go to Stadium, you can go to over in the Proctor area, you can find a house for that price. And many times people are able to get into a home pretty quickly, right? So that makes it where people here who have been here, everything goes up. Rents are going up. I mentioned that there's a couple of apartment projects going in. One of them has a studio that's like, I think, $1,800 or something like that. I can't remember now, but it's something astronomical. So a lot of the new development going in, apartments are starting to reflect that downtown because there's so much going on downtown right now that there's a lot of attention. When it comes to outside of downtown, I've seen housing development going on all over the city. And so you're starting to see that push throughout the area. We're talking very dense construction all over the city. It mentions Pacific Avenue at the very beginning of this article, talked about how it slices through the city. That is where the high density bus system is going to go, which is basically BRT. All along that area, they're starting to develop. In many cases, Seattleites' buying power has been displacing those with lower incomes who are in our community already, adding that many of the longtime residents are now themselves being pushed south, which I had mentioned. People are being pushed from here down to Thurston County, which is where Olympia is. And now you're seeing the prices in Olympia go up because the people who have been here since birth, some of them have been here for a couple of generations, can no longer afford it. And so now they're being pushed farther south because it's a little bit more affordable. The domino effect hasn't been entirely welcomed by Tacoma natives. There's definitely a lot of resentment, says Sarah, who preferred not to give her last name. The ceramic artist bought a home in Tacoma's Lincoln District, which is a hot area, by the way, 3 years ago for around a third of what she and her partner would have paid in their old neighborhood of Columbia City, only to see home prices in their new city soar. We got in right before the big wave came from Seattle, she says, acknowledging that it has been uncomfortable to have found myself in a position where I got gentrified out of one city only to become a gentrifier the next day, which is very true. When I say that we contribute, myself and Noel contribute to the gentrification effort here, or the situation here in Tacoma, that's very true. Because there are people here who can't afford the houses, right? This is a city that for a while stayed stagnant, and now you're seeing a huge change. And as a result, it's pushing people out. It's bringing in a lot of other people. Some people say not a big deal, whatever. But we're not talking about just gentrifying a neighborhood. We're talking an entire city being gentrified to the point of where it pushes out a lot of people. I made that argument. Some people bring it down to race and everything else. And it's like, it's not just a neighborhood. You understand. You know, this area here. When I say this area, I'm talking about the Puget Sound region. Maybe the same way in the Portland area of Portland, Oregon area too. But in this area, gentrification happens to the entire city. And you're seeing that happen here, where for us, it's not that big of a deal. The home prices aren't that big of a deal. But for people who are minimum wage folks, or people who have, you know, are used to paying $800 a month for rent, seeing a huge jump to where rent is now $1,300, $1,400 or $1,600, and their pay and their job skills don't keep up with that, it's devastating. So it's really and truly affecting the community. There are some people who say, well, I feel bad, I shouldn't move there. I say you can't really stop progress. You can't just hold yourself up because someone else is going to be impacted. It sucks. But both Seattle and Tacoma are doing things to try to help the housing affordability issue. I think that Seattle is got a better position because they have Yesler Terrace. But Tacoma also is doing things too to help with the housing affordability issue for people who have jobs. They just can't afford to live here based on the rents. These are not homeless people. These are people who work every day. They just can't afford it. But there are still people, definitely large numbers of people, falling through the cracks, and they're being pushed out. This right here goes back to what I've said before when I say I don't understand why businesses flood into Seattle when the prices up there are not justifiable. And down here, you'd be hard-pressed down here to find a ceramic shop. She talks about she has a ceramic shop in the, well, I guess they have one in the Lincoln District. You can't find a pottery place down here at all. And yet the population down here is booming. And that is what I don't understand. The lack of restaurants, which are changing, that's growing. I didn't understand that. The lack of entertainment and all of that type of stuff. It's growing, but it is oversaturated in Seattle, and yet the population is shifting down this way because it just makes more logical sense. When it comes to development, same thing. It just makes more logical sense because just by the acre of land, I mean, a postage stamp of land up in Seattle, downtown, is enough for you to buy several blocks in downtown Tacoma. But anyhow, hope you guys enjoy this video. This is another one that tells people who are saying that Tacoma's a ghetto. It doesn't seem like it when it is now the hottest market in the entire country. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.